All right, all right. Welcome everybody to another episode of Hot Seat Automotive Podcast. Your buddy CJ here. We're talking about all things automotive, car scene, cars, all the things gearheads like. This is the place to be on a Friday night. And on top of that, are you kidding me? We've got a special guest tonight. I love this guy. You talk about interesting dudes in the car scene. Josh Detroit Leatherwood, thank you for joining. Welcome to Hot Seat Automotive Podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Let's get into this. Let's learn a bit about Josh this evening. Josh, first things first, when did you know you loved cars?
I think I can't remember the exact age, but definitely at a young age. One moment sticks out to me specifically. My dad took me to Thunder Valley in Bristol for the NHRA race. And I remember hearing a Top Fuel dragster fire up. It was Shirley Muldowney's dragster, actually. And I heard that V8, and I'm like, this is just, I got it, man. It just all clicked, and ended up actually buying a piston out of one. She had little souvenir pistons there, and I still have it to this day, sitting here, right here in this room, in this man cave. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, did the piston blow out through the block, or she just had them available?
Yeah, it was just a used piston. Yeah, she had signed them and had them there for purchase. And of course, I was like, "Hey, Dad, give me some money."
Oh, that's awesome.
Kid,
Yeah. Where did you grow up, Josh? And what was the car scene like growing up?
I grew up on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, and it was very. It was very V8 centric for sure. Everybody running around in trucks, and I guess at that point, kind of pony cars. I like to say this, I don't know if it's true, but I feel like my graduating class, which, not to date myself, but was 2000, was the last kind of great car class at our high school. We were a very small school, probably about, I think at that point, 400, 500 people. But everybody had cool cars. I had my first Camaro. We had a couple guys with Vets. We had one dude with a Supra, one dude with a Z car. It was just, there was a lot of car culture, and it was cool cars, really aspirational stuff for kids, basically. Of course, that's back when you could buy cool stuff if you were a kid. Now it's a lot harder, but.
Right. Was Dad a car guy?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was raised in a family of, my granddad raced, and my uncle and my dad were diesel mechanics. My dad was at one point. So yeah, we were all into anything with basically a motor. Still that way today,
Got it. So you mentioned it, so now I got to bring it up. Camaros. So let's talk about it, right? What is this car, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so this is my '68 Camaro. I got this when I was 18, actually.
No kidding.
I put off college a little bit. I messed up a little bit around that time of life, but not saying college is the only track. We all know it isn't. But I wanted to buy old cars, so that's what I did. I found this in a yard, and a guy was just sick of it. He wanted a Dodge truck project, so it was basically as it sits. I've done some work to it, but I got it for a really good price and hauled it to a friend's garage and got it running, and the rest is history. It's been with me for a long time now.
You got to be kidding me. 18 years old, somewhere around circa 2000. And what is that? Is that a 67, 68?
68, yeah.
It's a 68. 18-year-old Josh, I'm trying to picture it, driving around in a 68 Camaro SS. Are you kidding me?
This is the car that I learned to drive a straight drive in. Like, I had driven a straight drive, but this is the car I got slick on a straight drive in. And that's very challenging in one of these cars if you've ever driven one.
Yep. Now, is this a true SS?
No, it's just a V8 coupe. It's been restored, obviously, as kind of sort of an SS tribute, but yeah, it's just a hot rod.
So because I grew up as a Camaro guy, I was never blessed. I never owned that car. If we were in high school and you owned that car, I would have been following you around. Hell, I still follow you around when I see you in that car. But, to me, that car with those rally wheels, the white letter tires, the stripe, That is American muscle. Like I think about Mustang versus Camaro, pony cars, the 60s era. That's the car for me, dude. That's the one.
Yeah, it's I feel like it's a great baseline for American muscle, and I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as a compliment. Actually, it's a car that it's a great classic car that everyone can relate to. You know, it's not too ostentatious. It was a great performance car. It's a great driving car, even today. As far as traditional cars go. So yeah.
Mm. So now I got to ask you a tough question, Josh. Things are about to get real serious because you just got done telling us the merits of your first gen Camaro. But now I kind of have to ask you to choose between, it's almost, I suppose, like choosing between children, because I believe in Josh's garage, you've also got this baby.
Yes. Yeah, that's my first car I got when I was 16. This car, on the other hand, was not this nice. I've done a lot of work to this car over the years, and it still needs a lot of work, honestly. But I feel like that's the nature of classics. They're never really done. But yeah, hands down, this car is my baby. Like I'd sell a kidney before, just because of the story behind it, and because it's my car, it's my first car. I'd sell my kidney before I'd sell this car. So actually, to
Now,
tell
hold
my
on.
wife, I'd probably sell my house before I sold this car.
Well, listen, there's a lot to unpack there. I thought you were going to say something about, the wife or the car, but no, I know your wife and I know where that priority is. But in all seriousness, tell us, there's a story behind this car. I mean, when you got it, was it, because so many of these second gens sadly rusted away. They rusted away hell in the 80s, for God's sakes. Not a lot of them survived. Floorboards rotted out. I remember these were dogs in the late 80s. In my era, a lot of them were already shot. So, what was the story with this one, Josh?
As far as restoration, yeah, pretty much the entire body has been gone through. The only thing that's really original probably is the roof and the trunk. It is a true RS car, though. It does. The only real way you can tell that an early second gen is a true rally sport is by the brace bars in the nose. And it's had the brace bars in the nose the entire time I've had it. So that means it's most likely a true RS car. And it was originally a Type LT, which is cool because 73 was the first year of Type LT. Obviously, it's not restored to that. It's nothing like it rolled off the factory line, but that's part of the fun, right? Is building them.
Right. And what year was this?
When I purchased this car,
No, what year is the car?
Oh, this is 1973.
All right, so it's still got the round taillights, or did they make the, no, I think it was 74 they switched the taillights.
Yeah, this is 73 is the last year of this look. So the bumperettes and the round taillights and everything.
Yeah. Man, yeah, that's the one you want. Yeah, so is this true resto mod? I mean, you got an LS in that. What do you got under the hood?
Yeah, I mean I'm not a huge fan of sticking LS motors in old cars. I mean, I probably shouldn't say that given the business I'm in, but yeah, it's still pretty traditional. It's got a small block 400 in it, but yeah, it's been I mean, it has a transmission kit. It has Detroit Speed springs. It has a better rear end in it, so it's better than original. For sure.
Yeah. So Josh, we took a look at two of your babies, the two Camaros. We found out that Josh got into this with what many of us, particularly in high school, I mean, those were dream cars in high school. I mean, those were, to have a really cool, not one really cool old Camaro, but two, even if one was more of a project car, that's pretty cool. And I think that immediately credentializes Josh's history in this hobby. But talk to us about how you found yourself actually pursuing classic cars as a career. So while some of us are weekend warriors, and some of us, when our day job's done, we think about cars and we look at pictures of cars and we, drool over cars. Josh has cars, and classic cars specifically, as his vocation, which I think is really interesting. Talk to us about that journey, Josh. How did that happen? Where do you work? What do you do? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of destiny, really. I don't believe in a lot of coincidence, but growing up, I mean, when you get a car like that when you're 16, I mean, that's a commitment. Like you're baptized in everything good and bad about old cars. I didn't have a heater in it, so I spent the Asheville winters with windows that wouldn't roll up the whole way and no heat. Driving around, and I mean, it's left me on the side of the road a few times, but I just love every aspect of owning that car, the personality of the car itself. I was known as the Camaro guy, small town, everybody knew the car, couldn't get away with much, but and I think that kind of just rolled over into becoming a part of my personality. I mean, I live the hobby, and I guess when I was in college, I applied for my first gig in the industry, but they were hiring full time, and that would have been with Streetside, the company I'm with now. It would have been about 2008, I think, is when the company started. And I don't think they hired me because I was still looking for part-time work. I was still trying to finish my degrees. And then I guess about 2010 or 2011, I found out about RK Motors. I had friends. I was just working in a restaurant. Me and my wife graduated during the recession, so employment was very hard as far as career employment. But I had friends that catered an event at RK Motors, and they're like, "Dude, you should really check this place out." So I did. I went up there and scoped the place, and I just happened to check their website, and they were hiring a rider. And I'd been, I'd done forums and blogs about the future of the auto industry for years. Like, I mean, I was just a nerd about that stuff online, and I had honed the writing style, gotten very knowledgeable about a lot of things. So I applied for the job, and I got it, and I worked my way up through the ranks there for 11 years. And this year I defected to Streetside, and I am currently the marketing and digital media manager for Streetside Classics.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Amazing. So I want to put you on the hot seat now, Josh, because we've got you on the podcast, and here we are, standing on the edge of a new year. Let's talk about the classic car market, because I think you're one of those fellows who's kind of got his finger on the pulse as an enthusiast, but also as a professional and as a guy who lives and breathes this stuff. Coming out of COVID, now here we are, blink your eyes, 2024. What's the state of the classic car market? Go ahead.
I think we're in good shape. And this is all my opinion, so take it for what it's worth. But I think we're getting back to where we probably should be. There's no doubt we're seeing a correction in the market. We've been seeing a correction in the market, but COVID was pretty crazy to live through in this industry because we couldn't source enough cars. Actually, it did nothing but boost our business at RK Motors when I worked there. I don't know if it was people refocusing on hobbies or refocusing on maybe, I don't know what exactly happened. I would assume that's some of it. I would assume some of it is wanting to invest in somewhat of an asset, a hard asset. But I think we're going to be in good shape. I don't think there's any need to sound the alarm or anything. Yeah. So I think we're back to where we should be, honestly, as far as values and everything, or getting there at least.
Got it. Are there any cars that, in your mind, Josh, you say these are really good buys right now? What comes to mind? What's hot right now in the classic car market? I know appetites and tastes change with the generations. Every 5-10 years, certain things turn over. It's kind of like old guitars. It's kind of like, a bunch of other collectible things. But in all seriousness, what's hot right now, Josh?
I mean, I think in the past few years, you've really seen trucks come up. And that's not really a trend that's been exclusive to the past few years. Classic trucks have been getting more pricey for a while, but you're starting to get, or you were starting to get a situation where, maybe people couldn't really afford a Bel Air or a Camaro, for example. So they're looking at something that's still maybe as cool, but not quite as expensive. So you're getting into C10s or, maybe even later model square body Chevys, something like that. And of course, there's always the kind of, anytime something is reintroduced into the market, it's going to boost values of classics. Like when the new Camaro came out, the first gen Camaro saw a rise. So obviously the Bronco, the Bronco mania that was happening a couple of years ago, that brought up the Broncos. I mean, we sell a luxury good. It might not seem that way, but we're technically a luxury brand, in my opinion, these classic car dealers, because nobody needs a classic car, right? It's all a luxury. So, it's kind of, I don't really want to say it's trendy because I don't really think it is. I think there's more of an emotional attachment to these vehicles that sells them.
Yeah.
But yeah, but some things, like the Bronco, I mean, you could have somebody come in that just saw the new Bronco and they're like, it'd be cool to own an old Bronco. Maybe never owned a classic car, but they got that inspiration, and they're coming in and checking it out, driving prices up a little bit.
I want to ask you a question, and thanks for that. And again, it goes without saying, but you did mention it. I mean, these are obviously Josh's opinions. Your opinions are your own. We appreciate it. That's what we're here for. But good stuff, man. And let me ask you this. Just, for those of our listeners who are thinking about marketing a car, putting a car on the market, what's the right play? Now, I know you work for Street Side, but in general, I mean, you got your auctions out there. You can go Facebook Marketplace. You can go consignment. What's sort of Josh's candid view of the way to go, and what the viable options are? What are the things that our listeners should look out for if you're looking to sell a used classic car? Selling it on your own versus consignment versus going to auction. What would be your advice or considerations for our listeners?
I would do consignment, but that has a lot to do with my personal view on it. Like, I don't really want to deal with the hassle of trying to necessarily sell something myself. So I would definitely look into consignment. I think that's a little bit more relaxed than the auction environment. With auctions, you're getting a lot of fees sometimes, and you get a good consignment place. You have to be careful with consignment though as well, because you'll get dealerships that's how they make their money, right? Is turning cars at consigning cars. So they'll charge you a fee for that, or they'll bring you into their shop and they'll be like, well, we can get this car ready to sell for $2,000 worth of work, and that's maybe not necessarily the greatest business case for an owner. If you have a car that's worth 18 grand, you're already $2,000 in the hole basically. So yeah, but I mean, it's just super easy to go have somebody look at it, give them a price you want to give for it, agree to a price, and then set it in somebody else's showroom for 3 months or whatever, see if it sells. Have them market it and everything. I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer, right?
Got it. Interesting thoughts, and I tend to agree with you. There's nothing, it's stressful selling a car, stressful buying a car, but you mentioned earlier it's an emotional buy, it's a spiritual buy. And sometimes, myself included, we get blinded as we go through these exercises. But shifting gears for a moment, Josh, on the other side of the fence, as a buyer, what do you see? And as a guy who's owned a lot of different cool cars, and we're going to talk about more of what Josh has in his stable at the moment in just a few minutes. But Josh, what are some pitfalls that you see guys making as they buy a classic car? And it is an emotional thing. I walk into the, one of these vintage car dealerships, and I see that Monte Carlo SS that I dreamed about in high school. Got to have it. Pull out the checkbook, fumbling with my pen. But what are the things that guy, whether it's me or somebody else, really needs to slow down and consider? What would be your advice?
I think first and foremost, coming from the background I've been in, which is selling cars that are pretty expensive, I think you need to love the car for sure. We can talk about these cars as investments till we're blue in the face. There's been a lot of talk about that since, I don't know, the early 2000s. But at the end of the day, you need to buy the car because you love it. Maybe you'll make some money on it eventually if you decide to sell it, maybe not. And I think beyond that, you just need to understand what you're buying. There are so many people, I think, that get into this hobby who, they got some money and they've owned a Porsche, or they've owned, some other cool car that's modern, and they see a resto mod and they're like, okay, it's going to be easy, right? Well, no, it's not, because even if it's a resto mod that's been restored, you're buying a 50-year-old car that has had all sorts of hands on it. You're still buying an old car. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And that's part of the character of these cars, right? Old cars are cool and they're fun to drive and they're raw, and sometimes they're going to piss you off because that's what they do, And I think third, maybe lastly, as far as important things, is never buy anything sight unseen. always either look at it and understand what it is, or send somebody who's qualified to check it out for sure.
So, a couple of the things that you mentioned, Josh, was that you've done some writing and some consideration for sort of the state of the automotive industry. What are Josh's predictions for 2024? What are the things, or even for the next 24 months for that matter? But as we look out on this horizon about, heading into January, what are some of the things that that you see developing in 2024 for the automotive industry, whether it's something with the classic market or cool technologies or new innovations or something else? Go ahead.
I think in relation to the modern market, which is, I really enjoy following the business side of that. I think we're going to see more inventory stability. You're going to stop seeing the crazy, values that are kind of have driven the used car market, especially for the past, I guess 2 or 3 years. I mean, I think we're up to an average payment now of like $1,100 for a car, which is insane when you think about it in relation to 5 years ago, and I think the other big topic I'll touch on is the EV thing. I think everybody, first of all, I don't think the EV transition is going to progress like everybody thought it was, as far as, flip the switch and we're going to be done. But I think all these people kind of celebrating that where it's not happening or it's slowing down, they need to not really celebrate that. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, EVs are fine, but it's just, as classic car owners and enthusiasts, we have to have a united front, right? Because eventually we are going to be the minority, and we have to back things like SEMA, I think, and band together and see that, yeah, this might eventually threaten our way of life. I mean, it's not a bad thing. Electric cars are cool. They'll solve a lot of problems, but I still want the option to drive my gasoline car, my classic car.
Right. Now, I think you bring up some interesting points there, and indeed, I think that folks are over rotating on some of the things. Is this a bit of an interim phase? Perhaps it is, and yeah, there has been a softening in the demand, but that doesn't mean that everything's turning around 180 degrees at all, does it?
No, it's going to happen. I mean, politics are involved in it. Sadly, politics are involved in every aspect of our lives these days. But when you have mandates that are happening like they are around the world, then yeah, it's going to happen. It's not going to end like some people seem to think, or appear to, put on the appearance that they think anyways. So
yeah. I don't know why I'm asking this question, but I have to ask this question, Josh, and I think everybody wants to know. Will we ever see Josh Detroit Leatherwood in an EV?
I would consider a commuter EV for sure.
Okay.
I have nothing against EVs. There aren't many that appeal to me at this point, but I've always thought the answer to our problems is a variety of things. I've thought EV, hybrid, maybe even hydrogen if we could get the infrastructure right, gasoline. As long as I can take out my Camaro or my GTO and, roar down the road with gasoline, I'm fine doing an EV some days,
Your point of view is consistent with mine. I grew up, all about that V8 life, and the hobby continues to evolve for me, which is what I love about it, the diversity and sort of the infinite number of aspects of this hobby, vehicles, and the ways that we can enjoy it and relate to it, to me, is what makes it fresh. Now, having said that, the EVs, I think they are cool. The gadget guy in me is fascinated by it. I love the technology. Yeah, I've got concerns about it. Haven't owned one yet, but it's something I could definitely see happening, and I wouldn't rule it out. Now, Josh, I got to pivot again here and put you on the spot, because there's a whole other side to this man, folks, that we haven't even touched on. And Josh, I want to get your reaction to this and talk a bit about one of your other passions that I know about. You know whose car this is, right?
Blackjack.
So folks, for those that don't know, and I want Josh to tell us about it, Josh leads the fan club in the Carolinas and some other activities for a little metal band called Metallica. and he's quite active in the Metallica community. I'm a huge metalhead from the 80s, and that's just another thing that Josh and I have in common is our love and passion for music. But Josh, talk to us. This is Blackjack. Hetfield, James Hetfield from Metallica, huge car guy. Talk to us about your relationship with Metallica and with Hetfield's collection. Just, this is fascinating to many of us. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of James's collection. Yeah, this is Blackjack. This is built by Josh Mills. He's a builder out of Georgia. I actually talked to him. We sold 2 of his builds at RK Motors, and he builds some really nice stuff. Yeah, but Metallica, man, that's the other half of my life, I guess, is cars and heavy metal. But yeah, I recently did. I filmed for they're making a fan documentary for Metallica, and the producers were talking to me about being the car guy tie into that. So recently filmed a lot of footage, with one of my Camaros, and just relating the band to cars, and how I guess it's to me, cars in the band are a healthy expression of masculinity. That's kind of how I see it. So hopefully it makes the movie. I don't know, but yeah, Hetfield's collection is amazing. I was actually at the Peterson earlier this year and got to see all of his cars, the Peterson Museum.
Let's get back to cars, and what's in Josh's stable. So I know my buddy Josh primarily from this car, which my perception is that this is one of your favorites. It seems to be a reflection of Josh's personality. It's blackened, it's blacked out, and there's a Metallica reference. But talk to me about this, because this is also, these GTOs are a bit polarizing, man, for a few reasons in my mind. But first things first, what's your relationship with this car? Talk to us about it.
Yeah, so this car, I drove around. I mean, I have a history of driving around beaters, $1,000 to $4,000 auction cars that, back when I was younger, I could work on every weekend and keep running because I wanted to keep my garage queens nice. So anyways, around 2012, I decided I was going to finally buy a nice daily driver. And I was looking at WS6 Trans Ams, because I just love those cars, but they were all, kind of just worn out at that point. And it just not really, I mean, they're not great cars as far as interior, and for sizable people like us, So I never really considered a GTO because I thought they were kind of boring looking. But I did. I started considering them, and I test drove an 06 at a dealer, and I actually found this car on a forum, which was the same price as the dealer, but this one had basically all the mods you see here. I've done a little bit of work to it. But anyways, this was going to become my new daily driver. But when I got it, it was just too nice. So I stuck it in the garage, much to my wife's chagrin, and I kept driving my $4,000, 300,000 mile Mustang convertible that I had bought off a guy via Facebook Marketplace.
Wow.
And the reason he was selling it is because he divorced his wife and he wanted to go to the beach. So I paid him cash, and and off he went. I don't know what happened to him after that. So.
Interesting story. Well, listen, the one thing I'll say with these, and I can see, I've never owned one of these, the newer pop, the reboot of the GTO, if you will, but I always liked them, and I could see how they would be really good daily drivers and really practical, high performance muscle car, put a smile on your face every morning on the way to work. Now, having said that, the one thing, and maybe it's because, the genesis of this car came out of sort of late 90s, early 2000s, but kind of curvy, doesn't, it lacks the aggressive edginess in styling to match that incredible performance that it had. In my view, I think the uptake and the love for this car would have been deeper if they went a little edgier. What's your response to that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This car, there are 2 big things about this car that are really awesome. One, it drives amazingly.
Yeah.
And 2 is it has a much nicer interior than pretty much anything you could get from GM at that point.
Yeah.
And those are 2 huge selling points. And even though it's a coupe, it's surprisingly roomy. It's just, I wanted something. I never had any modern muscle. And that's when I bought this, it was still fairly modern. It was 6 years old, And that was my big motivation. I want a variety of cars. Like, the next thing I add will be something like a 60s cruiser, like a Buick or something. I don't want to be, I want to be broad. I don't want to be, have four muscle cars in the garage necessarily, even though I guess I kind of have three, but yeah, at least there's a little bit
Yeah,
of variety, so.
absolutely. Well, you mentioned something there about interiors, and I think those that know and love Pontiac, and I grew up, my first car was a Pontiac, but just, as a GM aficionado and a Pontiac enthusiast, Pontiac, particularly this era, the 80s, even the 70s, the 90s, the best interiors coming out of Detroit, in my opinion. Whatever Chevy did with the Camaro interior, Pontiac was better. The Pontiac Grand Prix, like my first car, 83 Pontiac Grand Prix, that interior, so sporty, the vents, everything, the seats, the console shifter. Yeah, it's all GM stuff. So there's a core consistency to it. But whatever Buick did, in my opinion, Oldsmobile, Chevy, the Pontiac interiors were better. In terms of sportiness and edginess. Do you agree?
I do, yeah, absolutely. And what Pontiac was to become, I don't know how many people know of this, but Lutz envisioned Pontiac becoming basically what Dodge became, with the Charger and Challenger, just a performance brand. It's going to be three models prior to bankruptcy, but of course they had to lose all that during bankruptcy because they couldn't justify. I mean, Chevrolet can sell muscle cars and performance cars just as well as Pontiac, right? So, even though there are snobs like us, or at least me, maybe, that would have preferred a Pontiac over Chevrolet at some points in my life, not so lucky, right?
All right. So let's see here. Let's go back into looking at what's in Josh's garage. Maybe before the garage, this vehicle was somewhat abandoned and maybe Josh rescued it. I don't know, but I think I have to know the history. What are we looking at here, Josh?
Yeah, so this is a 77 Dodge Power Wagon. This actually belongs to my wife, and it's our current major project, and it needs a lot of work. This was the day we pulled it out of, I guess, quote, out of the woods. It was on some of her family's property up in Asheville, and we took 3,500 dually and a flatbed up there, and it hadn't rolled in probably 10 years. So we, it didn't have good brakes, so we put somebody in the driver's seat and rolled it down the hill and turned it left. And when we did, it almost turned over on its side, but we rolled it right in the middle of the road and winched it up on the trailer. And then we had to ratchet strap the old camper together so it could make the trip to Charlotte, which it eventually got scrapped. Cool addendum to that is we kept it had a little shell in it, like shell and epoxy. So we kept those. We're going to integrate them into our house we're restoring at some point. But anyways, yeah, so 2020, we held a big party at our house, invited a bunch of people over, and fired this thing up. First time it had fired up in, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And it's been in my wife's family for probably about 40 years at this point. So hopefully it'll roll someday. At this point, it just runs, but it wouldn't be safe on the street, but hopefully soon.
Wow. And here's another shot of it. Is this what it currently looks like, Josh?
Yeah, that's it.
And are you going to go basically back to sort of factory spec, or correct for the era, or are you going to do a resto mod thing? What's your vision for this vehicle?
I think it's being my wife's vehicle. It's pretty much her vision, but I think she's going to keep it pretty close. I mean, it'll be resto modded for sure, but I think it'll be pretty close to that. If we ever get to paint, we'll do something similar to that, maybe. I'd like to lift it a couple inches. I think it'd be cool. But she definitely wants to keep the 360 that's in it. It's not the original motor, but I don't know if it was like a factory replacement at one time, or it was replaced before her family bought the truck. So, but I want to rip it out and put like a diesel or a new Mopar performance block in it. But she is adamant about rebuilding that motor. So we butt heads a little bit sometimes over that. But hey, I admire her tenacity. She's a car person too, so she knows what she's
I know. And she's also, it's great. I mean, I've met your wife a couple times, don't know her real well, but you guys, Josh, seem to be one of those couples where you actually share passions. It's not like, well, Josh is the metalhead and he's the car guy. No, your wife is into cars and she's also into the Metallica, the heavy metal. And I know you guys enjoy that aspect as well together. It seems like you guys are a good pair. How long you been married?
We've been married about, man, I better not mess this up, right?
I'm putting you on the spot.
10 years, but we've been together for probably 20 years. So it's been a while.
Amazing. No, it's amazing. Josh, I want to put you on the hot seat for a couple things now. This is where I'm going to kind of ask you some questions rapid fire, and we want to hear where you're at. So you're a man of many projects and many cars, Josh. Clearly, you go to work every day at Streetside. You work in this industry. You got your eye on something. So, or maybe not. What's next for Josh's Garage? Is there anything you're looking at right now, or where are you at with that?
Oh, yeah. There is I'm always looking at things. There is a 1960 Buick that has been on Facebook Marketplace off and on for about 2 or 3 years. And I've been stalking that car. It actually started in Waxhaw, and now it's down, I think, around Winston-Salem. But give me another couple of years, and I will have that car if it's still on and off of Facebook Marketplace. I don't know. It's something more traditional. Yeah, I really love the custom culture stuff. And I kind of want something that's more in line with that now that I've got kind of the muscle car thing satisfied and the rest of mod thing and modern thing satisfied. So yeah, and Steph, my wife, she kind of wants a sled. But those things are very expensive at this point. So we'll see. Something traditional for sure.
Yep. What's Josh's dream car as we sit here now? And I'm asking the guy who, at 16, folks, this guy had a Camaro, second-gen Camaro. Then at 18, he's got a 68 Camaro. Like, hello, you were 18 years old and you already had cars that most guys were, crying in their cornflakes their dad wouldn't let them have, ever. But in all seriousness, what's Josh's dream car?
I don't know. This might sound kind of bad, but I mean, it's parked in my garage, man. A 73 Camaro, and I don't want it to be necessarily some big pro tour. Even if I had $100,000 to dump into it, I would keep it very much a raw Restomod. Like, I love the fact that, I go out in that car and it feels a little dangerous sometimes, feels a little unfamiliar. I love the fact that it's a little moody. I think that's the charm of vintage cars. So one day it might like me, the next day it might not start because it doesn't like me. And I think to me, that is endearing. So my wife likes to say that car is just like me. She's like, it's good, but it's rough around the edges. I thought that was pretty fitting,
Oh, Lord. Listen, I'm glad she said it, not me. But no. All right, next question. And speaking of Camaros, Josh, look into your crystal ball, man. Camaro is done, but is it gone forever? Is it coming back? What's your prediction for the Camaro?
I don't think it's done forever. I think there's too much equity in the name for them just to leave it as is. The thing that worries me about it is the softening of the EV market, because GM obviously, GM claimed they were going to, which they're still pushing hard into EVs, but a lot of that was for Wall Street, right? Because Tesla's valuation is what every automaker is chasing right now. So this big EV push, along with the luxury appeal of EVs, being able to sell them as luxury items to an extent, is the Wall Street valuation. But now with the softening of the EV market, I worry about how long it will take for Camaro to come back because, a sports car or a sports car sub-brand like they've discussed is probably not high on the list of priorities, even though electrification would make it easier to build theoretically, than traditional ICE. But I don't think it's done for sure. But I don't know that we will see. I think in the future, you'll see every sports car with an SUV counterpart because that's just the way the market's going. So get used to that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up some really interesting points. The Camaro, and I got a whole other episode on this, but it's just been the comeback kid forever. Don't write off the Camaro. It's always coming back, and it's, if you look at it, it's always trailed the Mustang. I think pretty much every year in production numbers, and it's fallen out of favor. Then it's come back, and yeah, coming back as an EV, a hybrid. But I'm like you, like I consider myself pragmatic and open minded, and I'm also a realist. So I say, listen, EV, whatever the history of the automotive industry is, EV is going to play a major part. I don't, we're probably not going to go all EV wing to wing in our collective lifetimes, but I don't know. But, you know, what I do think is that there will be a return of the V8. A lot of this legislation, I do think, will be tweaked. Some of it walked back, dates pushed back, but I do think that there's nothing new under the sun and there's cycles. And I suspect, Josh, that just like Dodge, oh, it's the end of the Hemi. Goodbye, SRTs and Hellcats forever. Wait till the return of the Hellcat, the V8 Hellcat. It's coming back. The V8 Camaro's coming back. Listen, if I'm proved wrong, it is what it is. But Josh, I got to tell you, there'll be another Z28. I don't know when, but I think there will be with the V8.
Well, the thing about it is, to pontificate a little bit more on this, they're going to sell the demand, right? So as long as people want internal combustion cars, the automakers are going to produce internal combustion cars. EV has to surpass the demand for ICE. Maybe someday it will, but who knows when the demand for ICE will completely die. My worry with GM with the Camaro is, what are they going to? First of all, production capacity is probably going to be used for the Corvette SUV. That's what the rumors are inside GM, anyways. And those are just rumors, so don't quote me on that. But secondly, what platform are they going to use? I mean, Alpha is kind of on its way out, and they don't really have another rear-wheel drive car platform anymore. So anyways, it's going to be interesting regardless.
One more question for you, Josh. And this one can get controversial. Best car guy movie ever. What's the film that Josh can watch any night, or at least watch part of it, and it's just, when it's on TV, if you catch a glimpse, you got to watch it, or if it shows up, for streaming, you might tune it in. What's Josh's go-to car guy movie?
I'm probably really going to hate myself for going on the record saying this, because I'm definitely an American domestic guy, not an import guy. But I think the Fast and the Furious probably is the sweet spot for me, because I feel like the original movie, not what the franchise has grown into, which kind of bores me at this point, emphasizing the family aspect of the tuner culture. That's what does it for me, honestly. When I was a kid, and maybe that's why, maybe I'm nostalgic for it because the movie came out when I was kind of in that phase. That's what we did, man. We went to backyards and we hung out with our cars and we had cookouts, and that was kind of your second family. And I just, every time I see that movie on, it's kind of rings some bells that others don't. As many amazing car movies as exist, there are tons. That's a hard question for sure.
It is, and it's one of those things that, in what you just said, a couple of things so important. Fast and Furious and the significance of that franchise in the first couple movies. But to your point, whether you're into tuner cars or not, with the first film, and if you go back and watch it, was really, to me, like action drama. The franchise has become action adventure superhero. Like, it's so ridiculous. It's so diluted. It's like Marvel action hero meets ridiculousness on the fourth dimension. Like, you go because it's the franchise and the brand, and you might see Vin Diesel and the old Mopar and a Grand National here and there, or a Fiero spaceship. But in all seriousness, you're going to see ridiculous karate fight scenes and all kinds of other nonsense that just so far removed from the car culture. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a spectacle now, right? I mean, the original was a story, but now it's a
Yeah.
spectacle. You want to go see stuff blow up, and I don't care to see that, really, unless it's a better movie than what they're putting out. Honestly, I hate to say that. That's kind of rude, but
100%. Well, listen, Josh Detroit Leatherwood, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. How do we get in touch with you, Josh? Whether it's, in your role at Streetside or in general, if our listeners want to get in touch with the man himself, Josh Detroit Leatherwood, how do we find you?
Yeah, you can just, the easiest way probably is follow me on Instagram, Detroit Thrash. Yeah, all that's public. And of course, work email, which is my name at streetsideclassics.com. So yeah, that's probably the two easiest ways.
Well, the other way, folks, is if you go to a Metallica concert in a major city, look for the tallest guy down in front, and it just might be Josh.
That also works at car shows too sometimes.
Fair. Fair.
Look for the tall, hairy guy. That's me.
Nice. Well, listen, Josh, thank you so much. Great having you on. I'll see you soon. Happy New Year to you and to Steph. And we'll be in touch. Folks, thanks for tuning in once again to Hot Seat Automotive Podcast. Give us a like and subscribe. Leave us comments, questions for me or for Josh. We'll definitely respond to those questions. And we'll see you on the next one, folks. Peace.